I got recording on now, so we are starting the Blab.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for showing up and saying hello. And we were on a couple minutes early, but now we're ready to get started. This is our first official Blab, but the team has been practicing for a couple of weeks, just playing around with it. Will's been awesome tech support helping us. He's kind of our guru with that fancy headset.
Yeah, that's right. I'm looking like I know what I'm doing.
That's what it takes. Buy the equipment, fake it.
That's right. Exactly. Fake it till you make it, buy the equipment, and it's half the battle here. So, okay, Mike's asking to call in, so we're going to give him a shot. And otherwise, we will get going. Last chance here. Yeah, Julie.
Awesome.
All right. So there, hey, Mike. Whoa, there's Mike. The Grand Poobah.
I had to have a technology expert help me.
Great. Looking good.
Well, it's 7 o'clock, and I think we're getting a show on the road, Mike. So
perfect.
You want to get us going?
Yeah, I think the problem for me, and I apologize for being late, was I was trying to use my iPad. For some reason, it's not working. But Jody hooked me up with another laptop, and I'm good to go. Welcome, everyone. I certainly appreciate everyone being here. It was really nice to have a number of people already waiting to join the Blab. That's really cool. One of the things that we've learned in the reinvention process is that you can't be afraid to try something new. So for some of us who are a little slower on to take advantage of the new technologies, we have been trying very hard to embrace Blab. We know it's an emerging technology. We know that many of you have been adapting to it, and it's a great way to have a conversation. It's a great way to sit around a campfire and have a conversation about things that you're interested in. And since I think most of us are all interested in reinvention, that's what we want to talk about. I appreciate the fact that many of you are not even in the United States, that we are now global in our conversation, and that's exactly what we think reinvention is. We think reinvention is a global concept. We think reinvention is, the time is now. I think some of what we're seeing in the world today would be helped by having a more reinvention thought process. And so, let's talk a little bit about how each of us got here on our journey and why reinvention is important to all of us. I've had the luxury of working in the reinvention space for a number of years, as you can see by the fact that I don't have as much hair on my head as some of the other people. I've just naturally been able to gravitate towards doing things different. And it's been comfortable for me to do that and have different thought processes. And I think that's been helpful in my background. Many of you might not have that same years of experience, but you're attracted to reinvention because you just understand that there's a better or different way that we should be doing things to accomplish some of our goals. As in the last 5 years, as I began to kind of reinvent myself over and over again, I was able to collide with some individuals who were also very interested in learning and talking about reinvention. And so here we are, the four of us, or five of us, we've banded together. We've developed kind of a reinvention thought process, and here we are. We've found that many people are also attracted to the reinvention space. And so what we intended to do is to create a community where people could come in a conversation and start to talk about what has worked for them and learn from each other. And so I think in my role, most of what I've done is facilitate conversations and facilitate what's working and not working. And I think the group of people that are a part of this project feel very much the same way. I'd like for everyone to kind of introduce themselves that's on the PureReinvention team, just so everybody can get a feel for who's at least in the windows that you're watching, and then we'll jump into our conversation. Who's next?
Jody, go for it.
Okay. So my name is Jody Schaefer, and I got to know, what am I doing? Am I supposed to be doing something?
I'm just pointing for fun.
You're doing great.
Oh. So I got to know Mike, and this was through work. We're both consultants, and so we got to know each other. And I actually moved to the same town that Mike had lived in, still lives in. So we got to see quite a bit of each other and collide in several different ways. And it was through that those collisions and those conversations that we realized that we had a lot in common in terms of how we thought, and we also noticed that there was a lot in common in terms of some of the organizations we were working with and some of the struggles they were having. And that's where Mike really started to introduce this idea of reinvention. And he had a philosophy and some steps that he had identified, and it just made a lot of sense. And it was something that I was attracted to and excited about because it was different. It was a different way of thinking. And so that's how I got started with the Pure Reinvention group. And it was through some other meetings that I met with Will and met Misty, Sonia, who couldn't be with us tonight. Josh was along in this journey too. So it's really been a collaborative effort. And we're now at the point where we actually have some products ready to launch, and the website's really slick, and we just had the app. And so I feel like we're putting on our big girl pants, and it's all becoming very real and very cool. So with that, I'll sort of pass the mic off to Will and to Misty, because those two are really the brainchilds behind a lot of what's been done in the last few months to make this go from an idea to an actual offering.
Go for it, Will.
Well, yeah. All right, I'll take it. Thanks for the handoff. Yeah, I'm Will Carlson, and mostly I'm the guy behind the scenes in the podcast production and the website, and work closely with Misty on a lot of the social media and content offerings. And my background is really nonprofit. I started after college running a small to medium-sized trade association, and I've been in that small association space with budgets from $80,000 my first year to about $10 to $15 million with some of the promotional orders I did later. And how I got to be involved with this group was in my tail end, I was working with the Bed and Breakfast Association running that, and hired Mike Bills on as my professional coach. And it was funny, Mike probably interviewed me more than I interviewed him in terms of whether or not we'd be a good fit. And I think from that moment on, I realized that this is I like this guy. And not long into it, I realized that maybe my space was better involved with what I'm doing now than being in a management administrative capacity. And so very quickly thereafter, I started Willpower Consulting and met Jody and Misty, and the collaboration that we have had through first MSAE and then with building this is just, I tell Mike often that this is a once in a lifetime collaboration opportunity, and it's been a thrill to be involved in part of it. And, we're doing a lot of things. We've done a lot of things in the last few weeks that are just plain exciting. And, we're out there on the edge, pushing the envelope, and sometimes some has been cleaner than others, but, I'm with a team that we check each other, and we want to insist on the highest quality, but we're also not afraid to make mistakes. And it's just, I'm great to be a part of it, and it's great to get to know these guys better. So go ahead, Misty, take it from there.
Well, that's perfect, because my name is Misty Miller. I have really known Mike the longest. Mike, we kind of, call the great connector, because he saw the vision of how we could all become teammates and work together with our own unique strengths. And it was kind of a risk, because we didn't know each other, but we just kept hearing Mike say, you ought to have lunch with, who you should make a phone call to. and so finally it started coming together one way or another. And these two faces you see here, in addition to Mike and Sonia, and we had another collaborator for a while named Josh, aren't really people that my world may have connected with without Mike putting us together. But what's been awesome is we learn from each other. We allow people to take risks. My background is in communications and PR, journalism major, and I love experimenting. I love trying to find, identify Pure Reinvention's voice, and with input from the team it's been a really fun journey, and I've loved that we all bring such different strengths to the table and make a better product.
Yeah, no, that was really great. Now, there are some other people that are on our connection. Is there any way we can get them to introduce themselves?
We can. Either they can type in introductions in the chat, or one of us can pop off and they can come on and introduce themselves on video.
I'm happy to pop off if anyone has an interest in popping on just for a minute, just because I trust that I can
Get back on.
Yeah, we can rotate.
Yeah. Julie Novak, do you want to give it a try?
Julie went to get a drink.
Well, we promised people we wouldn't put them on the spot. So
Okay.
Okay.
So let's just continue on.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing this past year since we've been working together. We realized that we had some common thoughts, and we had some glue that would bind us together, and we thought there was a real interest out in the environment to talk about this. So the creative geniuses, which are Misty and Will, had really suggested that one of the things we should get involved with was something called podcast. And we had not really known what podcasts were. We realized it was kind of new, but really, Will really had jumped into that space and took a big lead and said, let me find out how podcasts work. I think it's something that would be really a good forum for pure reinvention. And let me see what I can find out. Well, lo and behold, he came back not too long later and really had invested himself in this new technology. Now he's a technology guy anyway, so he likes that stuff. But the application of how it can connect us to other people in this big community was really what was important to me. Because connect is step 4 in the reinvention process, in one of the more difficult steps to accomplish. And Will was talking about how we can use a podcast to connect ourselves and our message out into the world. So, Will, can you talk a little bit about how the podcast had come to be and how we expect the podcast to kind of bring us together?
Absolutely, Mike. Mike and I and Misty in the early days where we really were formulating pure reinvention, or at least the kernels of it, we're really discussing and wanting a social element to convey and build content. And after a bit of soul searching and actually at first I was trying to prod Mr. Bills to write blogs. And it was like, no, that was a no-go from the start.
By the way, I do have a blog due at the end of this week.
Yes,
so
Yes, you do.
But
yeah, I'll make sure I got that in because Misty has made sure I know I've.
Oh, that was my 6 a.m. text. Do I have a blog due? Yes.
Well, with any social media strategy, you got to play into your strengths. And, clearly, if you listen to one or podcast and listen to these two talk, they got a natural gift. And so it really was a no-brainer that this would be a great way to convey our content. And, and also I wanted to create something that would enable us to really expand the field, to bring the reinvention stories that we're all encountering home. And so and then in terms of putting together the podcast, I listen to like Podcasts for Podcasters, and Cliff Ravenscraft and Michael Stelzner and a few social media geniuses out there, and all of them have got and Pat Flynn. All of them have these great guides on how to start a podcast. And I basically, during August of 2014, bought the equipment, played with it, did a couple sample podcasts, and said, "Hey, we can do this." And that interview we had last week with Under the Radar, those guys, it's the same thing. We just figure it out, go and learn as you go, and that's what we did here. And we started with twice a month. Again, if you're doing social media, the clear what you have to do is create, a certain sense of regularity. And so if you've got a plan, you got to make sure you stick to that plan. So we started with twice a month and then felt confident enough in 2015 that we made it a weekly endeavor. And thank God bless us all. We've stuck to that. And, Misty and I and Mike get together every few weekends and lay intros and outros. And Misty and I every Sunday, from about 9 to maybe midnight, or back and forth texting and posting these things.
But around Downton Abbey usually now, because we've got to get the final season of Downton in. So.
and then Game of Thrones.
Thank you. Right.
Well, Julie will tell you that in the beginning, it was just me. And I don't think it was okay. We did, I don't know how many podcasts we did with just me, but very quickly we realized that we were missing something.
Yep.
And about that time, Misty Miller wandered into one of our podcasts and started talking to us, and we discovered that would be a great addition to have a partner in this process, and really has added a lot. But the part I want to get to, and Misty, I want you to kind of share your thoughts on this. We have almost every time learned and grown and changed and adapted our podcast or our content or our delivery to learn and do it better. And you've been the main one to help us, to push us, and make us uncomfortable to do that.
Yes, maybe. So we have a 5-step, 5 fundamentals we apply to peer reinvention methodology. And the first one is disruption. And I'm kind of the natural disruptor in the group. It's something that is always, it came naturally. I mean, my mother could tell you all kinds of stories, and a lot of other friends in my life that can tell you all kinds of things. But what has helped me professionally is it's that willingness to take a risk, probably because I've had some great managers and leaders and mentors in my life that have encouraged me to challenge the status quo, not get too comfortable in how I'm doing business, and to just seek other things. And that's been really inspiring, because my whole life I've just had this professional journey that's told me to and encouraged me to push limits. And it wasn't really until 10 years into my professional career that I realized that wasn't always the case for a lot of people, that they weren't always inspired or empowered to do that. So it was a natural fit. And then I was able to connect with some great people that pushed me into it. And it keeps things fresh. And I think that there's, obviously we're peer reinvention, and there's a testament to that, but it keeps reinventing and it keeps things interesting.
I think that's really great, and I think one of the things that it has done, while it's been keeping Misty, it's been keeping us on our toes, is it has made the podcasts more enjoyable for those people who are listening. Julie Novak is listening, and she mentioned to me on a couple of occasions how much better the podcasts are with the intro and outro conversation, Misty, that you and I have. And I think that means a lot when somebody gets feedback from somebody like Julie who says that. And so we really appreciate that. Jody, you've been less involved directly in the podcast, but really involved in helping give us feedback on what kind of content to be in our podcast. Can you talk about how we've kind of together as a team talked about what kind of podcast material we need to be focusing on?
Well, I think, initially it started out with who do we know? Start with the friendlies, and maybe they'll come on and maybe they'll talk. And we were sort of just demoing this idea of a podcast. And then I think as the team felt more comfortable with the technology and sort of the rhythm and the pace of it, then we could really focus on what are we trying to achieve with the podcast? What message do we want to get out there so that as we grow the community, it's intentional and we are attracting the kinds of people that are thinking along the same lines or could challenge some of what we're talking about too, because that's sort of the idea here, is that it's never really set in stone. And we did have one podcast with Deb Hart, who is a local radio personality here in mid-Michigan. And hers was really different because she talked about a personal reinvention journey. And there was definitely a professional component to it, but hers was definitely more personal. And that, aside from the fact that it was Deborah, you know, it was on our podcast, like it was so cool. And you hear her like sultry voice, you know, and aside from just how amazing it was to hear her voice, her story was something that I think I personally connected with. It was the personal reinvention piece. And so we did talk a lot about that especially for our 2016 lineup, we want to reach out beyond the folks that we might know personally, into people that are doing really cool work. And that's for the Under the Radar one that would just aired this week, part 1. It was so amazing, by the way. So where we can really start tapping into people that have just awesome perspective, and they also went through a personal reinvention, which then led to a professional reinvention. And so I think that's really going to be the focus for 2016, is making sure that we look at PureReinvention in all of its forms. And I think that personal side is something that really is meaningful to me. And that's, I think, one of the pieces to the PureReinvention story and sort of where we started and where we're going. We've started to layer on some of these offerings, and some of the offerings that we're thinking about are really targeted to specific groups around specific ideas. And this idea of a personal reinvention was something that we felt so strongly about that we actually have developed an offering around, and we're targeting it specifically towards women, and it's called We Invent. And so that's a piece that I've taken a more active role in. But as far as podcasts go and the subject matter of them, I think it's really kind of expanded our horizons a little bit.
No, I think that's exactly right. I like the comment you made about layering, because I think layering is what we've really learned to do, and I think layering has strengthened what we're doing, because each step of the way we learn, and it's not always comfortable, and sometimes we step on each other's toes, and we've got to apologize, we've got to kind of fix things, but we are all on this journey, and we recognize it. And so I think maybe it would be important to just kind of talk about the 5 steps to reinvention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we can kind of then maybe move from the 5 steps into some of our offerings in 2016, where people can really start to participate, kind of see where at least this next layer is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to start by saying on the 5 steps to reinvention, the first step is disrupt. And I get probably credit for being a disruptor, whether I earned it or not. But I think what I've learned and watched in my career is I've always wondered why people didn't do what seemed obvious for people to do until they were disrupted in some way and were forced to do it. In a company, it might be a company that is stressed with cash flow before they recognize that a merger is in order with someone, when a merger might have been in order for a number of years, but there wasn't sufficient enough disruption to motivate people to do it. So personally, we have to have sometimes that same disruption. I think, Will, your journey of having a disruption allowed you the space to really flourish in this next journey that you're on. We're able to really tap into the true you. And so for us to kind of say the step 1 in the reinvention process, the disruption, is to suggest that you have to be ready to do something different. And it can be proactive and positive, or it can be reactive and negative. But in most cases, that disruption is really important and necessary to prepare us for the next step. So I'm going to put some of the rest of the team on an alert that I'm going to give you steps 2 through 5. So if you need a cheat sheet, know what the next steps are. I'm going to pick people, and then you are
step 3.
Jody's favorite.
So I'm gonna I'm going to pick Misty for step 2.
Okay.
Because I think Misty is really good with step 2.
Oh my gosh, really? Thank you for saying that. Step 2 is ownership, and I call it just biting off more than I can chew, but also just always saying yes and figuring it out later, which is something that this whole group rallied behind, and I know other people can relate to that, because sometimes you say yes, or you want to tackle something and want to learn, so you choose to own it. And I think that I think it's really important. And what we say through the process is you can't just disrupt things for disruption's sake. So step 2 in the process is ownership, because if you're going to knock something or, topple the apple cart, knock something over, you need to be there to pick up the pieces. So you need to be willing to step up and really make that change. So it's the commitment factor, and it's seeing it through. And it's not always a short journey. Like it takes time, it takes ownership and responsibility. And the other part of that is working through the fear. Because as soon as you step up and take ownership, it becomes very obvious
real.
It's on you. Yes, it becomes real. That's when you say,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, what did I do?" But
Yep.
that's where the magic starts happening. So the disruption is kind of, well, for me, the fun chaos of it, and then the ownership is when it starts becoming something you are willing to commit to and see through. So
I think that, I think, first of all, I think that was a really good job. But one of the things I want to follow up with is Misty said that not only was she comfortable with changing things or disrupting, but in many cases we see people that want to disrupt but don't want to own. And that's really not fair for somebody to come in and kind of kick stuff around and then walk out.
We have a name for people like that.
Yeah, this is still family hour, though.
That's right.
We'll keep it G.
Yeah, but I think what's important is Misty's comment that you have to be willing to own it, to see it through, to figure it out, to say yes. All of those things are really fair, because the safe thing is to say no. It's really hard to say yes, especially to things that are new or uncomfortable. And I think what Misty said was, you got to own it. And what we've really found in every single successful reinvention is we can track that success back to 1 or 2 individuals who have owned the outcome. And have been willing to do as Misty said and follow it through.
Julie wants to chime in, guys. So let's.
I'll pop out.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. You can't pop out. You're step 3.
Maybe we're going to make Julie talk about step 3.
Okay.
Julie is now on the stage. Give her a second to come in.
Hey, Julie.
Hi,
Julie.
Julie.
Comfort zone. This is the first blab I've even known existed, so kudos to you for getting me connected. So I want to make a couple comments, and then I'll get offline so Jody can get back on, because I'd love to hear from all of you. Yesterday we had a board meeting, and because of the work that I've done with some of you, and sorry, my dog's here.
Hi, dog.
Ours too.
Cute. Coach and and all of that. I knew that we're starting on a governance reinvention process, and I knew that I had to start to take some risks in order to encourage my board, which is fairly large, to take some risks. So yesterday I shared what I'll call a work in progress mission and values thing that I've been working on. And for me, I've often been in a situation where I feel like I need to show them and tell them all the things that we're doing and make them reassured that we're doing the right things in advocacy and, all of that. And I just decided yesterday to take the leap to talk about bigger, broader things than that and ask for their feedback rather than just being a reporter of all the activity. And it was a little scary, I'm not going to lie, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And I definitely got some good feedback. I have very masculine energy, very directed, very alpha type physicians. That's what they're trained to be. They have to make decisions and move. And so I don't know that everybody understood what I was doing or bought into it, but I felt they were paying attention, and some people gave me good feedback, and that was enough of it is right now. So I give you guys a lot of credit for getting me to get out of my comfort zone and be willing to do that with my own leadership, because if I can't role model that, I can't expect them to do it as well. And it was worth the risk, and I'll, kind of keep pushing gently along that way. But the things that I learned from the podcasts and from the things that you guys do have definitely been an inspiration to me. So I want to say thanks. And if this is your first Blab and I'm the only one out here, do it again, because I just barely had time to get connected to it. And I think people that are listening to the podcast will do it. But I had no clue what I was doing, and Will encouraged me, like, it's not that hard. So you guys should do it sometime for sure.
Well, Julie,
Everybody can get back on.
Yeah, well, don't go anywhere yet. Stay there for a second. I want you to know how many times your name comes up in our conversation, and how you and your encouragement has inspired us to keep moving and trying and be patient to let the market kind of understand what we're doing and adapt to us. So I think this is very much a reciprocal thank you, and that we have really needed your energy, what you've contributed to Reinvent. Just being here tonight is amazing to us and so inspiring. Thank you.
Well, I feel like anything I can do to encourage the work that you're doing, because it's encouraging the work that I'm doing, and to give momentum. You guys are doing this on top of your regular stuff, and I give you a lot of credit for that. But as I told Mike when I saw him last week, you guys had me at bus trip. I was done. I was like, whatever you're doing, I'm in. I'm trying to get there if I can arrange it. So that was a pretty amazing experience, and it definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone in a good way.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, what that taught us about what people needed to do, your comment to me that reinvention needed to be, I didn't need to see speakers rotating in front of me at the front of the room with a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I needed to have my seat on the bus keep moving.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that entire thing crystallized for us how we have to create experience.
Yeah.
So
we've already things to alter space in our building to create some space there for our senior staff to do some work. We had our first meeting there and really did some different things. And we're already planning to, at the end of the cycle, I talked to Mike a little bit about figuring out a bus trip for this group, because I think that would really help spur them on and give them the kind of inspiration and unusual experience that, gives you energy that I got from the Reinvent trip. So,
well, and I hope you don't mind sharing we don't share some of that, but when I mentioned to someone how important it was to experience whatever it is you're trying to do, like your experience in bus trip, and then you go through the logic flow that says, the really next step is your staff has to experience that same reinvention.
Yeah.
I mean, and even before you go to your board,
yeah,
it became so logical that was just one step at a time to kind of immerse people into the thought process.
Yeah.
And
it's a radiating outward from there.
Exactly. It's the same thing that Misty was talking about with layering.
Yep.
Jody, technically.
Oh, Jody, excuse me.
We're all interchangeable.
I take the credit if Jody wasn't watching, but I feel a little guilty.
All right, Will, shut me off so Jody can come back.
All right, great team.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
On Blab.
Good job, Julie.
All right, Jody's back on.
All right.
How much do we love her?
Oh my God.
much.
I love her.
She's the best.
Okay, Jody, you're up on step 3.
It's my favorite one.
Tell us what it is and what it's about.
Okay, step 3 is simplify. So I have seen some of the strategic plans that organizations come up with at these long board retreats and all these great ideas, just like I've seen mission statements that are several paragraphs long, just like I've seen resumes that have every possible amazing adjective listed in the intro paragraph. And the problem is when you have all that noise, you you don't know where to focus, and it becomes almost a convenient excuse of why stuff doesn't get done. You spread yourself so thin in so many different areas that you're really not making an impact. And if you are, it's really hard to measure, and so you lose the motivation and you don't feel like you're gaining the momentum. And so this idea of simplify your goal, simplify who you are, simplify why you're doing this, simplify what your customers want from you, not every possible thing you could provide them, but what they're really wanting from you. And then that way you can focus your energy in a really specific way so that you can make sure that everything's in alignment and that you're not, what's the expression, like robbing Peter to pay Paul, or, but you've seen it in organizations where there's just sort of this internal chaos and everybody's running and working really, really hard, but we're all working on very different things. And so at the end of the day, when you sit back and say, what did we accomplish? It's not a lot, right? We're exhausted and we're sort of frustrated because nothing really got done. And so the idea of simplify, especially so you disrupt, which makes you kind of pick your head up in the first place and say, what the hell am I doing? Right? And then you own it and say, well, I don't know, right? But there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. I'm going to find it. And then you say, aha, this is it. This is what we need to do. This is the direction we need to go. And when you can really kind of have that clarity, I think that's what really then propels you from an energy standpoint into the next 2 steps of the process. So from there, I'll sort of just hand it to Will maybe for step 4.
Well, connect is, and we write in the website, connect is really the most multifaceted of all the steps. And what you're really doing with connect is you're testing ideas, you're getting the coalition of people necessary to take the solution and run with it. That's at least the initial part. And you have to, in Connect, you have to not be afraid that if what you formulated isn't working, to go back and start over again. So, that's, you're connecting to your core folks, you're connecting to your major stakeholders, and coming up with a solution that's viable and that, we can move with. And if that doesn't work, you have to go back to the drawing board. And then once you do, and it seems like you get, a critical mass or an idea that you can build around, then it's connecting to the major players and the major multipliers that Mike likes to use, and getting them on board, and then getting that, idea out there or that project out there and implementing it, in which we do with Move. But again, Connect is multifaceted, and I enjoy it the most, and that's building coalitions, meeting people, and finding what we all have in common and can run with. And from there, we go to Move.
Doing it with someone else, right? And that was another thing that really came out in the Under the Radar podcast this week too. The fact that one of the gentlemen had reinvented himself a couple times before. It wasn't until he did it with this other, and I can't remember if it was Jim that was saying it or if it was, his name's not Bob, but I just want to go with like Jim and Bob. But this idea that, you don't have to go it alone, and really to be successful at it, you can't go it alone. So the connection is not only connecting the idea to people that need to, rally around it, but also connecting yourself as the driver of that idea with somebody who can help keep you honest too.
Absolutely. I think, great story.
I think that's exactly right. A lot of reinvention has to do with establishing new patterns or different patterns instead of same patterns. And yet those patterns may be made up of some of the same things we have before, but maybe we put them into different combinations. And so by having, by being able to identify in the simplified state our key assets, those things that are unique to us that we can use to grow and develop, we're able to think about our combinations differently. Misty and I have had a lot of conversations about the Connect steps. And it was in an office that Misty used to have. Misty, and I don't even know if you'll remember this, you had a color wheel, a color thing in your office. And we talked about that when I would go in there. And I didn't know a lot about it, but I was attracted to it because it was very visual. And what you taught me was all of those colors that are available in the spectrum come about because we basically have three primary colors. And so that helped me to clarify that if we could simplify and then learn how to connect in different ways, we then had a whole new spectrum of opportunity. But if we didn't start to change the percentages of how we were connecting these assets together, we weren't ever going to get any different colors.
That's a really cool analogy, by the way. Did you just come up with that?
No, Misty taught me that a while ago. I've been carrying that for quite a while.
Pardon the pun, right? But it's a fantastic visual.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you'll get tired of the primary colors analogy, believe me.
Yeah.
I was actually just looking because I think I still have that that artwork somewhere, but you guys are only seeing like the semi-clean part of my world right now, so I'm going to leave it that way. But we can find it another day.
But Misty had in her office, she actually had a thing that you could look at and touch and feel and see that really showed that. And, you know, when you think of the expanse of colors that are available, and then you realize that they really only come from different combinations of three primary colors, it was like amazing. It was just amazing.
My revelation in that process, and you know, we learned as we went together, as we started talking about colors, because Mike did something so classically Mike that we've all come to love, which is, so tell me about that. So why do you have this color wheel hanging on your wall? Well, I'm a graphic designer, and it was a quick reference. It was also a great visual. But then when we started talking about it, yes, it made sense that you find your core and then you adjust to whatever else, you know, you more of this, less of that color, give and take to create new opportunities. Touching on back to the connect, which was our fundamental, fourth fundamental, is it's not just about connecting people. And this is something Mike really taught me through that process of that color wheel. It's connecting ideas in different ways. We have some great podcasts and have had some great conversations with people about how they had this one idea, and it's what they always did. And I think a lot of companies get there. They just do this idea because it's worked for them and it's been their moneymaker. Well, all of a sudden it stops being their moneymaker, or they're seeing declines. They need to lift their head up and be connecting, whatever that is. If it's a trade show, if it's a major client event, whatever. And connect it maybe with other people, but maybe with a new offering. And I love that challenge of finding two completely different, disparate things and figuring out if they can work together. That's what my favorite part about Connect. So I had to throw that out there.
No, I think that's absolutely amazing that when you think about how simply some of these solutions are and how amazing it is that when you try to connect things together, many companies forget to connect to their marketplace. Yeah. They just forget that there's customers out there that they've got to be talking to.
Yeah.
And it's so simple and so basic, but when you ask somebody, if you ask how people feel about that, they're like, no. And it's like, doesn't make any sense. And Misty and I have had a lot of conversations about how these last two steps, the connect and then the movement part, are so difficult for that reason, because we want to do the same things over and over and over. So who wants to jump in and talk about the last step, which is movement?
I think you should, Mike.
So at the end of the day, in order to have had a successful journey, we have to end up at a different place. And logically, you would want the place to be where you were trying to go, as opposed to a mistake where you just ended up. And so one of the really important steps in step 5, which is movement, is thinking about your journey in terms of a navigation route, and thinking about it in terms of identifying a destination that you want to go to, and being able to scan the horizon and look out far enough so that you're not always discouraged or distracted by the things that are close and at your feet, but that you are taking a very long-range view of where you want to go. Now, that's the more typical strategic planning thought, but in this model, it just keeps us focused on making sure we're headed in the right direction. And, the terminologies of using benchmarks or metrics to somehow measure is important, but I think all of us would agree that when we're measuring our improvement, we actually may be measuring new types of metrics that maybe haven't existed before. So, for example, the creative people on the team can measure things like harmony, can measure things like attitude, can measure things like things that are not hard proven product or sales results focused. They can, for example, support and encourage the importance of building these layers that we're talking about, and how important the layers are to the strength of our foundation. So while I might be interested in measuring that we had a successful concrete pour, let's say we're building a house and we're doing a concrete basement, I might just focus on what the end is, and yet from a creative or a movement standpoint, having a continuous flow to that concrete, in other words, not having a seam, but allowing that concrete to flow so there's a continuous flow, is the strength of that foundation. It isn't the concrete, it isn't the height of it, it's the fact that it had a continuous pour. Now, there's some people on this team, and I'm not one of them, that I will just look at the end, but there are others who are very focused on making sure we're having a continuous pour. And it's sometimes we have to remember in movement that continuous pour is, or that layering is one of the more important things that we can do for a strong foundation. And we don't talk about that a lot. In companies, in boardrooms, we don't talk about the importance of that continuous pour and how important that is for a strong foundation of the future. But it is extremely important. So in that new conversation of movement, I think it's really important to think about new ways to measure things. And that is one example. What have we missed, team, in the 5 steps?
We covered them. That's good.
I think we did. Yeah.
I'd like to shift to over here to Jody.
Okay.
And have Jody talk about one of our first activities that we have started to create in the Pure Reinvention offerings. 2015 was kind of our year to get our podcast going and a lot of things that are continuous core and our strong foundation. Mm-hmm. But now, Jody, we've actually got some things happening. We've actually got some groups forming, and you've been at the core of that. Yeah.
So I was starting to kind of hint at it earlier. It was this We Invent idea, and this is something we've been kicking around for about a year, and it started out initially as an idea around how do we create a more robust leadership program for women that's specifically targeted for women. And as we really played around with that idea throughout the year, the goal of the program changed, and it was much more about how do we bring awesome women, and that was a prereq, by the way, so you had to be awesome. And how do we bring awesome women together of all different ages and different industries, different levels of responsibility, and how do we bring them together in a way and expose them to an experience where they would bond with each other and really start to share and grow and like genuinely care for one another, because there's so much to offer when you get just even a small group. I mean, we only had like 15 people, right, on our first bus trip. And it was amazing the wisdom that was contained in that one moving vessel. And it was amazing how vulnerable and honest and unassuming every one of those women was. And we're talking, the Julie Novaks of the world who are polished, really, have it together, really accomplished professionally, sort of at the height of their career, all the way down to, women who didn't know why they were there and didn't feel worthy and didn't think that they could bring anything to the table. And it was just amazing to watch sort of the fellowship and the bonding that happened all on its own, all because we created an experience where these kinds of feelings and this kind of community could happen. And that's really amazing to think about what the result was when we compared it to what the original idea was at the start of 2015, and how much bigger, how much more meaningful, how much more inspiring the real result was. And it's the flow. It's exactly what you're talking about. And that was the jumping off point for us. So we had this sort of super secret experience, and we didn't tell the ladies a lot about it. We just told them where to be and when to be there and to plan for a full day. And we sort of handpicked, our list of awesome women, and we had most of them say, sure, I'll come along. They had no idea what they were coming along for. And then we loaded them on a bus, which many of them had no idea we were going anywhere. So that was awesome. And we went on a bus, and we gave them these smash books, which was Misty's amazing idea. And it's like a journal, but it's not set up like your traditional journal. And it just really set the tone. Nothing about this day was going to be traditional. And we got to meet with some really inspiring female women who are making big things happen in Detroit. Some of them are social entrepreneurs. Some of them are, oh, she's got it right there. Yeah. Some of them are social entrepreneurs. Some of them were small business owners. Some of them were sort of high-powered corporate individuals. And we had a chance to meet with all of them and hear just how common a lot of the struggles that we all experience are. And it was on the bus ride home that I think the real impact happened, when we talked about what had meaning for us. And we started to share our own stories, and we started to share our own struggles. And so the concept at this point, yeah. So the concept at this point is now that group that was on the bus, literally on the bus, has become a cohort. And we plan throughout 2016 to bring this cohort back together several times throughout the year for different events, some more social in nature, and some events that have a kind of a higher educational focus. We're calling those our sip and savor events, kind of a wine reference there. And we're going to kind of dip our toe in some pretty heavy material, and then have a lot of time to kind of savor it and think about it, digest it, talk about it. And again, I think that's where the real impact's going to come. And so that cohort will continue throughout the year. And then this fall, we'll launch cohort 2, and we'll bring a whole nother group of really amazing ladies together. I don't know if we're going to put them on a bus. I don't know. I feel like we got to up our game. We got to mix it up. But the idea is that every year we'll have additional cohorts going through this. And then we'll have times where we bring all of the cohorts together. And so that sense of community just really grows and grows. And it's that layering effect that you were talking about earlier. So that's kind of our first offering. It's a little out of the box. It's very pure reinvention-y, and we're sort of building it as we go. So it's been really, really meaningful.
No, that's awesome. And I think what it's really taught us is how we've been able to pull people into this continuous flow now. So we're now working on our next focus. So as I have the kind of the what's next, one of the things that Misty has done in our social media Facebook page is always has that what's next graphic up there. So every time you go to Pure Reinvention, you see the Misty reminder of what's next. Misty, you want to tell us what we've got next planned for Detroit in May?
Sure. We are going to kick off one of our feature programs. It's called Starters. And it's a combination of sort of a personal and a professional journey on how you reinvent your processes. It's 3 days total, a day and a half, and then there's a FaceTime, 3 days total FaceTime. 2 1.5 day sessions in the city of Detroit, where we're going to be taking you out and really learning from the innovators that are in the Detroit area right now are phenomenal teachers. We have so much to learn from them. We'll get you in an intimate space with them, kind of a backseat pass, and give you tools that you can use to apply the 5 fundamentals to your life, to your career. Whether you want to, jump ship and change career, or whether you're happy where you are and just want to grow and maybe create some change and a little disruption there. We'll pepper that with some coaching calls and great support. We're all here to be mentors to those starters people and keep them connected, keep them alive. There will be a lot of accountability. Well, a lot within reason, but a good amount of accountability. I'm not trying to scare you away. But yeah, we're going to ask you to take ownership. What the sip and savers for the We Invent experience are, and what these coaching calls for starters are, and more is the accountability to give you the tools. So it's not just a place where you're going to come and get a bunch of theory. We're going to give you the tools to really do it, practical applications, and we're going to be there to walk you through it, because the best laid plans never go exactly how you want them to.
Well, it's about the journey. And as we've learned with We Invent, that Jody taught us, is if you can get this group of amazing, awesome people together, and they can support and encourage and be a part of your community. How many times have we heard from people, I didn't realize other people were experiencing the same thing I was?
Yeah, a lot.
And what we've learned is we have to make sure we build the community so that there's always others there to help. So, Will, we've got one other big event or activity that's available for organizations to participate in with our corporate retreats, where you can bring your staff or your board or your group and get them involved. I'll talk just a little philosophically about the thought behind our corporate retreats.
Yeah, well, as Maggie is chiming in here, the corporate retreats. We were noodling last fall on how we could make the Pure Reinvention experience tailored to various size organizations, and we had come to the decision really that we should, be able to scale this. And we had conceptually gone over a scalable approach all the way when we were working with the Detroit folks and also with the Detroit CVB. And so that idea all along was in the works, but we had made a decision that we would go out there and promote to various entities. And Jody always reminds us it's not only nonprofit, that there's a bigger world out there. And I am grateful for that, because my background is, oh my God, nonprofit. And but between Mike, Jody, I, and Misty, we believe we have a very applicable formula that works for anything. And I've worked, I have a small business myself. I've worked with small businesses, and I agree that this is an approach that we all can do. But basically what we're doing is we're going to you directly and organizations directly that are very interested in the Pure Reinvention mission, very interested in Pure Reinvention cause, and we are communicating to you that we can scale. So if you've got a half a day, a couple hours to 2 days, we can scale an event for you and deliver something that's meaningful to you and your staff.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And so we kind of, you think about the lesson that Misty taught us about the color wheel, that from the reinvent to the corporate retreat and everything in between, we have created offerings that we can layer and make available to create a really strong foundation of what Pure Reinvention is. And knowing this group, you should know that they're already are in discussions about what to do in 2017. so that this is for us, a continuous journey. If you ever hear a participant in Pure Reinvention say, wow, that's a lot, believe me, we're living that. And so we understand what that feels like. We are behaving that as well, and we're living what we're preaching. I believe, and according to my phone, it's 8:01.
We did it!
We did it!
Everybody stayed on. This is great.
Good job, guys.
Yay!
So nice job, everyone.
Hey,
Thanks,
thanks so much,
Julie.
Julie, for joining us. This is great. This is really a
You're a
charge.
rock star.
Yes.
But stay tuned. We got the part 2 of the Under the Radar interview. It's going to get pushed out on Sunday. And then we have a great interview with Dr. Phil Knight the week after. And Mike and I are heading to Jackson tomorrow and meeting a real interesting gentleman who actually I went to school with and runs a toy shop, a 3rd generation, and does consulting. Yeah, so it's a really exciting.
Oh, yeah.
And Phil's a real interesting guy, and looking forward to pushing that out too. So a lot of
So
stuff.
Julie, know that while you're listening, if you know of anybody that would be good for a podcast interview, we're all ears.
Absolutely. So thank you everybody for being here, and have a great night. And I think we'll do this again sometime short or soon. So
See you very soon.
bye everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Great job, everyone.
Bye, guys.